Hello everyone and welcome to the Duke's Farm. My name is Dennis Duke Woniala. Welcome to this channel where I talk about farming, everything farming, but most importantly, farming as a business. Today, as the topic suggests, we're going to take a very quick look at some of those qualities that one should consider when actually choosing farmland or land for farming. Now, choosing land for farming can be a very challenging task, more so when you're not very ready and you're not very conversant about the topics that I'm actually gonna talk about in this particular video today. So sit back, relax. If you're new, kindly subscribe. Go and follow me on my different social media platforms at Dennis Duke Uganda. Now let's dive straight into the qualities that one should actually consider when choosing farmland. Quality number one is, before you even look at these qualities, understand what exactly you want to do with that farmland. Having an idea of what you want to start with is the initial stage, is the initial quality before you start actually looking for farmland. For example, the same land for livestock cannot be the same land for growing crops. I mean, you can rear animals on any piece of land or a land that has this kind of topography, but again, there are certain crops you cannot grow in an area where the land is steepy or slopy, or in a swamp. You can't rear animals in a swamp. So the kind of business venture you want to go into kind of dictates some of the qualities that we are going to talk about. Number two is the location of the land. Many a times, for example, in my country, farmers choose land that is a bit further away from the city or deep down in the villages, for purposes of being cheap. I mean, yes, it's cheap. You can get a plot of land at about $2,000. Yes, $2,000 you get a plot of land. Now, for people who choose that kind of way, they tend to go a little deep in rural areas, which is okay. So they get a big chunk of land. They can get as many acres as they wish because it's cheap. But the disadvantage that comes with that is accessibility. So the location of your land must really matter. So when we talk about location, is it located in a place where there is market? Where is it located? It is very important. Number two, or quality number two, is the availability of market. Now, we are trying to team location and market. I want these things that move closely related or that are interrelated to move, after the other. So when you get the location, is it next to a market? Because at the end of the day, you will need to sell your produce, your farm produce, to people or to whatever, your clients, and your clients are the people. Now, if you do not have, if you're in an area where there are no people, it means you will have to incur the costs of transporting your goods from this particular field or farm to where the market is, and the cost can be sometimes a little bit very disturbing. So if your location is very deep in the village, it means you'll have to look for market, which market will incur the transport cost. And at the end of the day, you bought the land cheaply, but your investment in terms of producing and actually having access to market has increased the cost. I don't know whether you get my point. So location is important. Availability of market is very important. It's good to locate your farm where there is market. Market should be somewhere between 1 to 2 kilometers. Anything more than that, it's a bit inaccessible sometimes. So people will come on your farm and they'll buy your produce cheaply because they'll factor in the transport cost. Or if you happen to take it to the market, you'll have to incur the transport cost. So you should consider that as well. Another thing, the challenges with getting land that is closer to people or closer to the market is it will be a little bit higher. So you weigh in and see which one do you settle down for. So location, availability of market, availability of water. Now, water is very important because at the end of the day, weather changes, weather patterns change every other single day. So availability of water on the land is very key. It could be the national water. It could be close to a lake. It could be close to a river or a stream. Availability of water, because whatever you do, you will need water. You cannot rely on the weather. It's just not practical. Not practical at all. Even if you're going into rearing animals, you will need water. When if you go into producing crops or growing crops, you will eventually need water. So availability of water is very, very key onto the farm. So when choosing land for farming, factor in that as well. Another factor that you should is availability of other utilities like roads. Now, I wouldn't advise somebody to go into an area where the roads are impassable, the roads are bad, because at the end of the day, you'll incur a lot of cost in terms of transporting your produce, in terms of transporting your animals to the market, or people accessing your farm. So accessibility is very, very, very important. Now, when I talk about accessibility and roads, there are people who buy land or farmland, and in the initial stages, they don't actually take the mandate to find out whether this land has an access road or not. And after they've bought off the land, they realize they're going to use somebody else's land as an access to their land. So they end up being charged twice. This person could decide to close off his land, and boom, you have no access to your land. So when you're buying land for farming or farmland, you must make sure there is a good accessibility to your land. If they've not demarcated the road very well, please ensure they demarcate it before you actually buy it, so that it saves you a lot in the future. Also, when you talk about accessibility, the roads should be at least good enough so that you can drive on it, or you can use whatever means of transport, but the roads should be really, really in good shape. Otherwise, you will hate farming for good. Yes, another is the topography of the area. Now, when you talk about the topography, by this I mean, is the land hilly, is the land steepy, how is it made up? Is it a swamp? Because a swamp may not necessarily support livestock. If it's hilly, the same thing. If it's hilly, it means in bad weather like rainfall, crops could be washed away by soil erosion, but also nutrients keep being washed away by the running water. And at the end of the day, you find land that is good in a good location, yet it has all the other qualities, but just because it's hilly, it's not favorable for a certain specific crop or a certain but also if the place is hilly, it means it will cost you in terms of putting up farm structures. Yes, they will charge you higher because they will need to balance the area so that it's flat enough to accommodate buildings or structures. If it's a swamp, the same story. You will incur a lot of cost in terms of building up structure. So you'll need something between it should be flat, it shouldn't be in a swampy, unless you want to there are certain crops that really want to grow in a watery area like rice and others. So like I said, I take you back. What you want to do helps you in choosing in choosing these factors, or factoring in all these, so that you get land that is very, very suitable for your activity. But also another factor that you need to look at is, of course, the issue of soil fertility and nutrients. There are some soils that are acidic in nature. There are some soils that do not favor a specific crop. So you will need to also do a soil test, okay? A soil test to estimate or find out if at all that particular land can, support what you want to do. Yes. Another reason, or another factor that you should also look at is the availability of power or electricity. Most times people don't look at it as a factor until they are actually on the farm, that they now need to run heavy machinery, or they want to go into another process of agriculture or farming where it involves processing of their products. For example, you may choose that, okay, I want to have a hatchery here. So sometimes the initial cost of having a solar could be way too much to actually handle a specific project that you actually need to have power on the farm. So if you are in an area where there is no power, you are actually going to have a very, very difficult time processing your products or adding value, where we call value addition into farming. And I think lastly, you need to look at whether the land, you need to look at the land tenure system. Yes, there are some lands that do not favor certain activities. For example, there are certain crops that even can live on for even 100 years. That we are talking about crops or plants like apples or apples, depending on wherever you are. We're talking about mangoes. We're talking about those trees. They take quite a lot of time before they can be destroyed, or before somebody can say, I'm done with this. So you're looking at the land tenure system, meaning you need to own, for example, for the case of Uganda, you need to own land that has a title, a chapa, to be specific in our local language. Land that is going to be yours even after you die. Your children will inherit, your grandchildren. And then we have another land tenure system where that is freehold, where you hold that land for a specific period of time. We have Kavaka land. So depending on the kind of project you want to do, it will then guide you on what land tenure system you could opt for. Of course, I would advise people to get land that is titled, land that has a title, a land title. Those are good for farming because it then guarantees you of the longevity, I think, if that's the right word. So I think those are a few things that I really, really wanted to discuss today on the factors that one should consider when choosing farmland. Dennis Duke is my name. If you're new here, kindly subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at Dennis Duke Huge. Until then, it's a goodbye.